The gavel slammed down like a thunderclap. $500 million, Judge Thomas announced, his voice echoing through the grand marble courtroom. That is the fine imposed on Senator William Kennedy for gross misuse of government funds and obstruction of justice. Gasps rippled through the chamber. News reporters outside the federal courthouse scrambled to transmit the headline to the world. Senator Kennedy stood motionless at the defendant's table, his usually composed face unreadable, his fingers pressed together as though holding back a storm. A war hero turned public servant, Kennedy had always been a man of principle, or so the public thought. Today, it seemed, justice had caught up with him, or had it. Kennedy didn't flinch. He didn't lower his gaze. He simply leaned toward the microphone and, in a voice low but razor-sharp, said, "Your Honor, may I speak before this sentence is finalized?" Judge Thomas raised an eyebrow. "This is highly irregular." But Kennedy had already begun. 10 years ago, I stood in the middle of a war-torn province overseas, watching children pick through rubble for food. I was there not as a soldier, but as a human being, and I promised myself that if I ever had power, I would never turn away from suffering again. The room fell silent. Even the bailiff paused mid-breath. "I entered public service not to get rich," he continued, "but to stop the bleeding where I saw it. I passed the Infrastructure Equity Act that brought running water to the reservations. I fought lobbyists tooth and nail to make insulin free for diabetic children. I stood alone when it was unpopular to speak out about veterans' care, and I paid for it politically." He turned toward the gallery, where journalists scribbled furiously. "Yes, I moved funds without committee approval," he admitted. "I bent rules to funnel money into crisis zones when FEMA delayed. I did what I thought was right. And if that costs me $500 million, I'll gladly pay it, but I will not let you turn this courtroom into a spectacle of shame when you know the system is rotting from the inside out." Judge Thomas's face darkened. "Order," he barked. But it was too late. The room had shifted, not physically but emotionally. What started as a scathing judgment now seemed like a public execution of a man who had challenged the machine too hard, too often. Later that evening, cable news was ablaze, not just with the fine, but with Kennedy's speech. Clips circulated, like wildfire across every platform. A CNN analyst called it the most powerful courtroom moment since Atticus Finch. A conservative commentator admitted, "I don't agree with him, but damn if he didn't make me question everything about this case." But the real twist was yet to come. A week later, something remarkable happened. A junior clerk inside the courthouse leaked documents to the press. Memos, emails, audio, all detailing a concerted effort by lobby groups and certain judicial members, including Judge Thomas, to discredit Kennedy for blocking a billion-dollar military contracting deal. A deal Judge Thomas's brother-in-law had financial ties to. The implications were seismic. Within 48 hours, the Justice Department launched an ethics investigation into Thomas. Senatorial colleagues, some who had kept their distance, stepped forward to defend Kennedy. Even his harshest critics in the Senate floor admitted something smelled foul. Public rallies erupted in major cities, supporters waving placards that read, "500 millimeters for justice," "We stand with Kennedy," and most poignantly, "Truth doesn't flinch." Back in the courtroom, things were unraveling for Judge Thomas. Kennedy, now wearing the calm of a man vindicated, sat quietly as federal investigators presented their findings. One by one, the truths were laid bare. The pressure to indict Kennedy, the political motivations, the bribes, the backdoor meetings, the broken oath of impartiality. It wasn't Kennedy on trial anymore. It was Thomas. In a stunning reversal, the court vacated the fine. Thomas was disrobed from the bench. And Kennedy? He didn't gloat. He didn't call a press conference or bask in revenge. Instead, he visited a VA hospital the next day without cameras and spent 6 hours with patients, reading letters, holding hands, listening. The scandal that had begun as Kennedy's downfall became a blueprint for how to face injustice without compromising integrity. He didn't return to the Senate right away. He spent 6 months on the road, speaking to communities that had long lost faith in their leaders. Not as a politician, but as a man. Someone who stood in the fire, not for survival, but because others couldn't afford to burn. And the final note of it all? In the very courtroom where he'd once stood accused, a bronze plaque was installed. It read, "The truth doesn't flinch, in honor of those who serve justice, not power." The camera would fade out there, the image lingering, and somewhere in the background, Kennedy's voice would echo, "Sometimes doing what's right means losing everything they told you matters. But if you keep your integrity, you'll find what really does."